So, why do some startups make it big while most just, well, don't? Is it all about genius or timing or just pure dumb luck? Today, we're diving into Eric Ries' The Lean Startup to see if there's a more scientific, repeatable way to build something that actually lasts. Let's get right into it. We all know this story, right? The one about the brilliant college kids in a dorm room hammering away on keyboards and inventing the future. It's our modern-day myth, that compelling story of raw genius and sheer determination. It's what we see in the movies, and it's kind of the story that fuels Silicon Valley. But here's the thing. That story is the exception, not the rule. The tough, grim reality is that most startups fail. Most new products just don't find a market, and most new ventures burn out before they ever get off the ground. And when failure is that common, the explanation has to be something more than just, they didn't have a good enough idea. And this isn't just some abstract problem. The author, Eric Ries, he lived it. He tells this really painful story of his first company failing, burning through all their money, and it all ending in a shouting match with his co-founder in the middle of the rain. They had a great idea, a great team, everything you're supposed to have to guarantee success. But as he realized later, they were pretty much doomed from the start.
That failure sparked a massive question. What if we've been looking at this whole thing wrong? What if building a startup isn't an art and it's not magic, but it's actually science? What if there was a process, a method that could be learned and managed, one that could turn the massive risk of failure into a systematic way of finding what actually works?
And this brings us right to the core idea of the lean startup. It's all about moving past the myth of the lone genius inventor and towards a new kind of management science. And here's the really big idea. Startup success can be engineered. It's not about being lucky or being in the right place at the right time. No, it's about following a rigorous, repeatable process. A process that can be taught and it can be learned, which makes the whole act of creating something new and innovative accessible to pretty much anyone. So this really forces us to rethink what entrepreneurship even means. It's not just about flashy ideas and cool tech. When you get right down to it, entrepreneurship is management, but it's a special kind of management. One that's specifically designed for navigating the deep, crazy uncertainty that every single new venture has to face. And this really frames the huge difference in approach. The old way, right, was to write this perfect 50-page business plan and then just execute it flawlessly, praying that your map was correct. Well, the lean startup completely flips that on its head. It says your job isn't to flawlessly execute a plan, your job is to run a series of experiments to rigorously test your vision against reality. Okay, so how do you actually run those experiments? Well, you use a simple but incredibly powerful framework that's at the heart of this entire thing, the build, measure, learn, feedback loop. This loop right here, this is the engine of the lean startup. I know it looks simple, but everything, and I mean everything, revolves around this cycle. It redefines what a startup is supposed to do. You're not just there to make stuff or serve customers. Your number one job is to learn how to build a sustainable business. All right, let's break it down. First, you build a very simple version of your product. We're just an experiment to test a single idea. Then you measure how customers actually behave. And we're talking real data here, not just their opinions. And finally, and this is the most important part, you learn from that data. Do you keep going, persevere, or is it time to pivot and change direction? But here's the secret sauce. It's not just about completing the loop. It's about the speed at which you do it. The entire goal is to minimize the total time it takes you to get from an idea to a product into the hands of customers, get real data back, and then have a new, smarter idea. Learning faster than your competitors, that becomes your single biggest advantage. And this is a perfect way to think about it. If a traditional business plan is like a detailed map that you printed out before a long road trip, the build, measure, learn loop is your steering wheel. The map can't tell you about a traffic jam or a sudden detour, but the steering wheel lets you make constant, small adjustments based on the real road in front of you and make sure you don't drive straight off a cliff just because the map said to. So, if we're constantly steering and learning, how do we know we're actually making progress? How do we know we're not just spinning our wheels? This brings us to one of the most important concepts in this whole methodology. Progress isn't just being busy. It's not about how many features you ship. It's about achieving what's called validated learning. And that's not some fuzzy feeling, It's a rigorous, scientific way of proving with cold, hard data that you've discovered real truths about what your customers actually want and how your business can serve them. But that's the key question, isn't it? It's so easy to say,
Oh, we learned a lot after a project fails. So what's the tool that lets you get this validated learning, this real proof, without having to bet the entire company on one huge launch?
The answer is the minimum viable product, or MVP. But, and this is super important, it's probably not what you think it is. The goal of an MVP isn't to be the smallest, cheapest product you can imagine. Its purpose is to be the fastest way to get real feedback from real customers. It's the absolute simplest thing you can build to get through one full cycle of that build, measure, learn loop.
Okay, so all of this experimenting, this building and measuring and learning, it all leads to this recurring high-stakes moment of truth that every single startup has to face. I love this quote because it perfectly captures the balancing act you have to pull off. You need this unique combination of grit and flexibility. The data you're getting from your experiments becomes your guide. It tells you, hey, stay the course, or, uh-oh, it's time to make a big change.
And that big, fundamental change, that's called a pivot. And let's be super clear. A pivot is not an admission of failure. It's the opposite. It's the result of successful learning. It's a strategic, structured course correction where you keep one foot planted in what you've learned while changing a core part of your strategy to find a much better path forward.
This idea completely reframes how you should think about a startup's lifespan. It's runway. Your runway isn't just about how many months you have until the money runs out. Your true runway is the number of pivots you have left, the number of chances you still have to learn and adjust your strategy before you run out of resources.
And that leaves us with the ultimate question posed by the lean startup. It's one you can ask yourself, or your team, or your entire company. Are you driving blind, just following a rigid plan you made a long time ago in a vacuum? Or are you using the steering wheel of real-world data to constantly adjust, to constantly learn, and to find the path that actually leads to success?